the fire scene is not a go, 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 go as fast and hard as you can for 12 minutes and then lay on the ground,
Yeah.
and post about your EMOM scores. That's not a fucking fire.
First of all, thanks for jumping on. And I'm a fan. I've been, paying attention to your content. Really like a lot of the stuff that you do, but particularly one thing that I thought was really cool was the other day you were talking about your morning routine,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of stuff caught my ear. But obviously, it was like a 10-minute video, and you mentioned like, hey, I really can't get too much in depth because this whole thing could be like super crazy if you want it to be, right?
Yeah,
But one thing that I really thought was interesting that I wanted to talk about was the Wim Hof breathing, the cold
absolutely.
therapy stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously the warrior versus athlete mentality that we got going on. So, could you introduce yourself? Kind of tell us a little bit about how you kind of got started in this little world that you're in, and why you do it.
Yeah, so my name's Quinn. I've been a firefighter for 20 years in the city of Oakland, California. I grew up in the city, so I'm like born and bred Oakland all the way through. I started off kind of on my path, I would say when I was about 12 years old, I started really getting deep into sports and athletics. I started out as a swimmer, and I had this wonderful coach, and the coach was one of those coaches that was able to weave life into whatever athletic thing you're doing. And he talks a lot about the importance of life as a microcosm of swimming, right? And how that manifests and how it can make you a better person. And he kind of pulled the curtain back to some of his coaching philosophies and what he was doing. And that really embedded a love for me for coaching. And I started coaching when I was 13. The very next summer, I started coaching, underage, about 6, 7, 8 year olds on swim
Cool.
team. And that was a passion ever since. And I followed that passion straight through to the fire department. I said 2002 is when I got hired. And then 2007, I got tapped to become the head of physical training for all new recruits in our academy.
Nice.
And yeah, that was a pretty much when I got into my academy, that was a real weak spot. The physical fitness, the PT was kind of random. It didn't have a lot of thought. It was kind of who was free that day and how much time do you have left at the end of the day, and let's go do something. Oh, maybe we'll run 6 miles. Maybe the next day we'll just do push-ups until our eyes bleed. And
Yeah.
people were getting hurt not because of the loads, but because of the kind of inconsistency and the lack of planning. So I was really excited to take that on. I've been there ever since. Like I said, I've trained over half our department, about 300 and plus members at this point. And over the years, I've kind of built, robbed and stealed things from other people and things I've read, and kind of built my own philosophy and idea of what's the best way to train a recruit to become a firefighter.
Very cool. So, kind of in that, I'm sure you're always still trying to, apply new techniques or find something that you could possibly use. But as far as, I want to jump right into the Wim Hof stuff,
Yeah, let's
and I
do
know
it.
that you had mentioned like, I know a little bit about the guy. I live in South Florida. So cold water for me is like even our ocean doesn't even get as cold as you guys over there, right? So like the Atlantic is even warmer than the Pacific. So like I like getting in cold water. I try to do it every single morning. Um, you know, cold in the winter for us, my pool will get like 65 and I'll jump in there. I mean, that's cold, but so I still try to get into like some kind of cold water every morning because I love the idea behind it. I love some of the science behind it. But tell me about why you apply that Wim Hof method, the breathing, the cold therapy into kind of the health side of the fire service.
Yeah, so for those people that don't know, Wim Hof is this very eccentric uh, Dutch gentleman who kind of his whole life has studied kind of esoteric teachings and delved into yoga, but never really found a sense of well-being and peace. His wife committed suicide when his kids were very young, and this was kind of the catalyst for him. He was walking by a river in the middle of winter in somewhere in the Norwegian countries, and he saw this cold water and decided he was going to get in. Didn't quite understand why, and got in. He said instantaneously he found that centering peace. And so, hearing that story, it kind of spoke to me because I feel like oftentimes in the fire service, we kind of bumble through life trying to find a little sense of inner peace and calm. And, I've done workouts, I've done yoga pretty much my whole physical life. And kind of, his story kind of echoed to me like, okay, well, I haven't really found anything, so I'll try this out. And I was kind of, researching him and whatnot. And then my wife just happened to come across, she was doing a workshop in San Francisco. And this was early on, and there was only probably 100 people in the workshop. And it was a day I was off work. I didn't need no trades. It was perfect. So I went, not knowing anything really with the method. And I did the breathing for the first time. And it was like a light bulb went off. And it was just amazing.
Hmm.
So I went down the path. I became an instructor. I'm a level 2 instructor now, and I practice it every day. And I teach the breathing techniques and the workshops outside the fire department. The breath work is a little too far out in the woo woo land for us over here in Oakland, and the cold is no one's going to get you. No one's going to back you on that one yet. So, but it's
Yeah.
coming. I have lots of firefighters that do it. Lots of people that are interested in it, but from an admin point, they're not really down with that yet.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the hard problem, and not even just admin, like just across probably the whole country, right? As soon as I am a big fan of even just meditation, right, and trying to clear your head a little bit for our own mental health and all that stuff, but just life, you know what I mean? Forget the fire service for a second, just life. I think it's awesome. I got off of 48 this morning. I was beat, and I absolutely want to sit down for a second, have a minute, and clear my head too. And even just to help you fall asleep properly, I think it's a big thing. But say meditation in the fire service, and like you're gonna lose half the room. You know what I mean? Like guys' eyes will glaze over a little bit.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's
One of
hard.
the best things I heard, and I forget where I heard this from, but talking about like firefighters, cops, military people, and you tell them, hey, we're gonna go, ruck 10 miles, and we're gonna run, then we're gonna do this workout here, and they're all in, they're ready to go. And that's not a place for us to really challenge ourselves. We can do that, but you tell a couple group of firefighters, we're gonna sit for 10 minutes, and we're gonna try to clear our mind and listen to our breath, and all of a sudden, you
Yeah.
would think that the room's gonna fall apart. And so to
Right.
me, that tells me exactly where you need to be focusing your energy. Yeah, I'm happy to, if you got questions to delve down the Wim Hof method, I'm happy to go down that more. You probably know your audience better, or you have more personal questions. But one thing I will say is, it comprises of three pillars. It's the mindset, which he's really big on. And that's kind of what he focuses in, does his little hand thing. And this is the idea that the mind is the powerful driving force. And that's the piece that allows us to do all these things. And I think a misperception that a lot of people have is that he uses some secret Jedi strength or breathing technique to get through the cold. And really, what it is surrender and release. And I think that's a place that we as firefighters struggle with because we don't. Our nature is not to surrender and release. It's the fight to the very last possible moment, and even past that moment. So I think that's a challenge for firefighters and a place that we can have lots of growth in. And the second pillar is the breath, and the breath work is what's the best way to describe it? It's kind of deep belly breathing, but at a very fast rate, almost kind of controlled hyperventilation. And this is by design to blow off the carbon dioxide. When we blow off the carbon dioxide, as anyone who's a medic knows, we change our pH, we change our chemical balance. The oxygen uh, ratio increases, and this kind of gives us the kind of the crampy hands or tingly lips. But this is again, this is part of the method. It's an oscillation between those two worlds. And then as we retain our breath, we retain on the exhale, we release our air, and we hold our breath. We go through this period of having that really hyper oxygenated low CO2 state, coming into like a balanced state, and then you start to go down below into the region where our carbon dioxide is actually really high, and our oxygen levels start to decrease. And it's a fun thing if any of you guys want to play with it, put an O2 stat on your finger. I've gotten below 50% oxygen saturation in the breathing and been totally conscious and aware,
Yeah.
which is, some people would say is impossible. But, it's possible. And so I think in those states, so many different things happen. There's all kinds of hormonal and neurological things that happen. There's also a whole piece of moving from a super anxious hyperventilation state into a kind of very deprived, almost like panicky, like an oxygen state, and learning how to be conscious and calm in those states and control those states and transition through those states is really important for firefighters. And the last pillar is the ice, and the ice is the cold, and the cold is what Wim calls the most righteous teacher of all. And when you get to the cold, you see, I've done enough workshops, and I'm also a jiu-jitsu brown belt, so I have a good community there, and I see these guys who go in there, and these tough want to be MMA young guys, and they try to fight the cold, and they can't stay in that long at all, and it looks brutal. And then you see some of these women who've had multiple babies and whatever, and they're here because of health or whatever's going on with their bodies. And they get in and they just release and surrender, and they're in the cold and they're fine.
Yeah.
It's that process and that dialogue with the body that I think is really really key for the cold.
Yeah, those last two I think are really crucial for us. The first thing I think of when you mention going like oscillating between those states is if you have a really intense scene that you're on, or just you're just working, you have that moment or those several moments where you're like hypoxic, like there's you're not thinking straight because you're just so tired. And that's, I think we've, like, the US Fire Service has done a good job of trying to push for training when you're already tired. Like, don't go do a search drill when you're fresh. You should do a search drill after, or try to drag somebody when you're already beat, because it's not as accurate. And fighting through that fatigue to be able to perform when you're already in a hypoxic state, I think, is important. It's the mental side of it too, where you need to train yourself to focus when you're really really tired, because you act differently, and if you haven't done it before, you're not going to perform well. So I think of that, when you're mentioning it, and that's one way we can relate. But then also the cold, being able to sit and force yourself to be in a cold environment is a form, I think, of like stoicism. Like, you need to be able to surrender to that. And the same thing when realizing what's in your control, what's not in your control. If you get on a tense situation, you're only going to be able to control things after you get there. Walking in and having that cool, calm, collected mindset to say, like, all right, everything's kind of chaos right now, I'm going to just do my thing and focus on my tasks, or be job oriented. I see a ton of ways to relate all three of those pillars into what we do. I think, like, when I heard you talk about it, I didn't know all this other stuff about Wim Hof. I knew, that's the Iceman. You know what I mean? That's the guy that climbed Everest in the shorts or whatever. And I enjoyed hearing that. So I wanted to get your opinion on it, because the next thing I was thinking was the warrior versus athlete mentality that I heard you mention, and I hadn't heard some of our other training guys that are big in the fire service mention that. So, as far as like getting the fire service to agree or understand or buy into some of these other things that they, like you said, they'll be totally cool with throwing a pack on and running 100 miles. But where we're focusing now is kind of like, all right, well, there's this other stuff that you're kind of shying away from, or you don't necessarily readily want to do, but there's all these ways to relate it in. Have you been doing some of that stuff at Oakland? Like, are you bringing this stuff in with your recruits? Especially the Wim Hof stuff.
Yeah. So the Wim Hof stuff in particular, not so much. It's difficult for me to teach elements of it because I'm an instructor, unfortunately, and branding they're pretty tight on that. But
Gotcha.
The philosophies, I think, of our warrior mindset is kind of misconstrued. We forget the side of the meditation and the peace and the breath control, which is really a huge element and pillar if you read any of the old samurai and old warriors from the past and philosophies. I mean, it is deeply rooted in that. And so what I've been doing is I've been kind of rephrasing and revamping the entire way we attack a workout, so to speak, from a mental standpoint. Oftentimes, we come into, I teach recruits, we come into a workout and we've been trained that the anger is what is going to push you further. and the language people use to themselves is like, come on, you Sally, and whatever other, four-letter words you want to put in there. We've heard them all. Uh, and it's that mentality that you beat yourself up and you degrade yourself to accomplish a task. And the problem with this is that when we are faced with a challenging task, I mean, that's physical or emotional, any kind of state, our first reference point is to default into a negative mindset, into a self-deprivation mindset, into an anger mindset. And that clouds your judgment, it clouds your reasoning, it clouds your ability to perform ultimately. And so taking some of the philosophies of the Wim Hof method, kind of how talked about, we talked a little bit about the breath work and how that plays in, and an idea of surrendering and releasing, and understanding the cold and the nature of the cold. You kind of hinted around, like, when you're in the cold, this idea that we can't control the cold, but we can control our internal dialogue, our internal state. And same thing on scene. Like, I can't control the scene. I can't control how chaotic it is per se. I can control how I perform inside and how my internal dialogue goes, right? And so when we focus a workout, the first thing I tell them is every day you have to decide or name one thing you're trying to get rid of. What is this workout going to shed? What are you going to walk into this gym? What are we going to throw this kettlebell? What are we going to do this row? What are you trying to leave behind? What's something negative that you don't like about yourself? And then the next piece is, what are you trying to move towards? What's a piece that you want to become? And the the last thing I say is that piece that you want to become is already inside you. It's already there. You have to find it and foster it. And so then the workout has this framework that we're entering it with the idea that we're leaving something behind that we don't like, and we're entering this something that we do like. So we're building a better version of ourselves. And then the dialogue that I tell them, that you have to use positive words. You have to say, I can get through this, I can do this, or thank you, thank you, to my body,
Right.
thank you
Wow.
for, and that mind shift will change the way you process and the way you act on scene. And all these things will start to shift in your mind. It's a process, but that's kind of some of the ways that I blend the Wim Hof into the kind of physical world of training recruits.
Isn't that odd too? Like you'd mentioned, our default is kind of being angry or whatever, but the like the ancient way of a warrior isn't like that at all. You would think it's the opposite. Like you would, like, if you asked the American culture, or like a firefighter what kind of training they probably went through, like a samurai, they'd probably be like, all right, well, they were super tough, like they screamed at them all the time, like, it's like a boot camp, right? That's not what they were doing. It's a cultural shift that I think that we would have to look at, like, hey, how could we be more centered or at peace normally, so that we could function at a high physical capacity when called upon? And that's a really cool difference, and I think a different way of looking at it that I don't know if anybody would ever put together. I didn't put that together. I think that's pretty awesome. So as far as your morning routine, like, how did that, obviously you had been learning the stuff and developing it over a while, but how and why do you set up those things that you do? Because I know, like, you do fasting, you do like intermittent fasting, some of your nutrition, like, how did that all come to play? Just kind of trial and error, and you figured that's the best for you?
Yeah, a lot of trial and error, a lot of research, and I'm gonna try this, I'm gonna try that, and see how my body feels, how my body responds. Some of it also is the warrior mindset. I've been intermittent fasting long before it was ever a thing. Just because I got in the fire service, there are days where you walk in and you didn't have time to eat breakfast. I mean, you were going until lunch, and maybe sometimes you missed lunch even. And
Yeah.
so I was like, and I noticed that, man, I was really, really dragging. And there are these old timers who did construction and did the trades, and they still were firefighters, had two jobs, and they're working still and they're fine. And I'm like, what is going on here? And then one of the things they talked about was, hey, sometimes you miss the meal, and you can't let that derail you. And so I was like, well, I better start training that, and not knowing what I was doing, I was like, I'll just skip breakfast, and I'll just, work out really hard and then not eat until lunch, and see how far I can go, right? And not necessarily understanding what I was doing behind it is some of the, I'm giving insights, and kind of like, sometimes you fumble through things, and sometimes it's a little more intentional. So intermittent fasting is kind of a fumble through that I kind of stumbled upon. It feels great for my body. I love doing it. I think we can talk about all the science. I'm sure a lot of people listening to already know all the science behind it and why it's really important. I think for men, especially as we age. And then let's see, adding in layers of stuff like water consumption. Water consumption is huge. I think that's a number one dietary nutritional supplement, whatever you want to call it, that we overlook all the time. Our body's made the most of the water. It's the thing that everyone agrees on. I don't care if you're vegan, vegetarian, keto, prime, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Everyone agrees you got to drink water. Everyone agrees you got to drink pure, clean, highest quality water possible. We don't talk about that. And so my goal is, I try to drink at least a liter right when I first wake up, and trying to get pretty close to a gallon before I even eat any kind of food at all.
When you first wake up, like how quick are you, like just chugging a liter as fast as you can?
Well, I wake up. I probably, I can probably put down about maybe, a quarter to a third of a liter. Go to the bathroom, brush my teeth. Finish that. Pretty much try to finish that off, and then go do my breathing.
Okay.
The Wim Hof breathing, and dive into that method. And I break the Wim Hof stuff up. I do my breathing in the morning, and I do my cold at night. The cold
Cold at night?
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Man, I'm like
it's
so wide awake after.
No, I mean for me again, that's everyone's different, right? For me, it's almost like at the end of the day, I can get in my cold tub and I have a view from my house and I can see the sunset or the stars are out, and it's
That's
just
cool.
like to me it sets, I do it before dinner,
Gotcha.
I
Okay.
get in there and it kind of just levels it out, and I roll right into family dinner, and that's wonderful. But back to the morning. So, yeah, I wake up. I don't eat much at all, and I hit water. And the only thing I put in my water is Celtic Salt, or kind of trace ocean minerals. It really helps your body kind of absorb the water. It helps you on a cellular level, and all my body is getting is that really pure, clean water with those trace elements. So it utilizes it, it revives it, kind of cleanses the body. Do the breath work. Then I try to hit the gym, work out, whatever that's going to be. In the past is jiu-jitsu, and that was my world. And the last year has kind of thrown a wrench in that, as
Yeah.
for most people. So I filter back to some of the things that I do: kettlebells, yoga, a lot of body weight stuff. That is really where my focus is for that. And I almost always try to blend in when I'm not on the mats, when I'm doing a workout. I always try to blend in yoga with whatever I'm doing. And I think it's that juxtaposition. Again, we say this in the fire service all the time. A famous quote that I remember learned early on in jiu-jitsu was, "There's a waiting in action and an action in waiting."
Hmm.
Basically, this idea that no fight is it just go, 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 go. It's always like a give and take. It's a throttle control, right? And again, we train we train our firefighters like athletes, or like what I like to say is too often we train our warriors like athletes and our athletes like warriors. And the fire scene is not a go, 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 go as fast and hard as you can for 12 minutes and then lay on the ground,
Yeah.
and post by your EMOM scores. That's not a fucking fire. I'm sorry.
So true.
So what is a fire? A fire is, going hard to the paint, getting that hose line stretched, and then sitting down on your knee, taking a moment, putting your mask on, making sure, settling down so you make sure your gear is correct, your partner's gear is correct, and then going in. And it's just ebb and flow, right? And so when I
Yeah.
train that, I'll go hard with some kettlebell movements, and then some yoga movements where I can lock into my breath and really lock into the body. What's it doing and what's it telling me? And then go back into the kettlebell and back into the yoga and back and forth in these two different worlds. My body's training that. And then after the workout, kind of handle whatever things throughout the day. I usually eat my first meal, and it's at this point in my life, there's no meat in the first meal that I eat.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna put that on anyone. I'm not saying I need protein. I'm just saying I need meat in that first meal. Again, everyone has their own ways. It works for them. That's great. I'm not gonna want to debate that too much, because I feel people get really passionate about those things.
Yeah, they can sometimes, but
I think
whatever.
it's important to balance what works for you. Try some. Don't be
Right.
dogmatic. Try new things.
Sure.
And then more, more water, whatever I'm working out the day. I also, one of the things that I like to do is I like to have a main workout that I get done in the morning, and then I have things I do throughout the day. And again, that's also towards the fire service and this idea of being a warrior, that athletes, they perform at a given time and place and they're done. We're asked to perform constantly throughout the day in pieces, right? So we need to
Yeah.
train that. I'll take again my main workout, knock that out, and that's okay. Now I'm gonna do throughout the course of the day. Maybe I'll do 5 pull-ups, 10 Hindu push-ups, and 3 kettlebell snatches 10 times. And I'll go down, I'll knock it out 2, 3 rounds, go do some stuff around the house, come back an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours later, knock out another 2, 3 rounds, right? And so my body's training to constantly be in that quote unquote ready state or be able to perform.
Yeah, it's super interesting. It's a couple of things on that. I've never heard of Celtic Salt. Why do you drink that with your water? What is that?
It's kind of the same idea as trace minerals. So I don't know if you've
Okay.
heard of trace ocean
Yeah.
minerals, but there's that you can get trace ocean minerals with some folic acid and a dropper, and that's really good for your body and your cellular health. A much cheaper, accessible way is Celtic salt from Ireland. It's super high in mineral content. It's you can buy a bag at Whole Foods or any natural food store for pretty cheap, and you just grab a pinch and put it in your water, shake it up, and it's not as good, but it's a pretty close substitute.
It's just like sea salt, basically. Yeah, I gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I've read a lot about like trace minerals. A lot of people are mineral deficient. So you just throw that in the water. Helps first thing in the morning with a liter. And then
Firefighters are notoriously minerally deficient because we sweat so much, amongst
right.
other things that amongst toxicity levels of heavy metals and other things. But we're really in a state of dehydration, even though we're drinking water, drink whatever. We're in a constant dehydration if you're not understanding the need for minerals.
Yeah. And then it's like at the house. I mean, I know at least at my house, there's like a 1-to-1 coffee or energy drink to water ratio. You know what I'm saying? So like a lot of the water, I mean, I don't even know how much you're actually absorbing. We drink a ton of caffeine, which, that helps the dehydration. But what time, like, how long do you fast for? Like, you don't eat until lunch?
It varies. Again, I really try not to be too dogmatic about it. So when at work, we try to eat at 6 o'clock at night. So I'll eat at 6. Usually we're done by 7:30. Again, sometimes calls come in, you eat later. It is what it is. But generally, I try to finish eating around no later than 8, and then I try not to eat again until at least noon.
Okay.
Again, in the firehouse, everyone wants to eat what we call, noon, straight up and down, clown. Like we want we want the noon at
Right.
6. Like
Right.
like like that's when we eat,
Yep.
and but at home, sometimes I go till 2, 3 o'clock, and there's certain days where I'll just I'll feel like I don't necessarily need to eat lunch. I feel my body feels pretty good. I'm not super hungry. The fasting is feeling really good to me,
Yeah.
and I'll just ride that through to dinner, and sometimes even I'll ride it through until the next day. It just yeah, I'm not dogmatic about it. I think that's the thing that I think some people really try to get like locked in. I'm gonna do 16 hours, 18 hours all the time.
Yeah.
I think the problem with that is that we lose this connection with our body and this idea of understanding what our body's trying to tell us, especially when it comes to nutrition.
Yeah. Also, like, kind of the science behind it, like the point of the intermittent fasting is a little bit more natural to what we probably evolved doing. And it's like there was no set time that you would eat every day. You know what I mean? Like, you ate food when you got it. It just wasn't usually 3 times a day, And, what did you start, like, before you were doing intermittent fasting? What did you feel like, or what was your weight like, or what was the big difference that you saw before and after for you?
Yeah, so I would say before I would eat, and then I'd be like, look, you're tired, lethargic, especially on this job. I mean, you just said you got off at 48. I got off at 48 too. And you're tired. You eat. I'm gonna go take a nap. That's one thing. My not the whatever. My bowel movements weren't as good. My hydration, my energy levels were less. My skin, I had a lot more acne. and my joints hurt more. I could go on and on down the list, but
Yeah.
cutting out that my morning meal, giving my digestion time to rest, give my cells and everything this time to really absorb the water, really work through the body. It everything moves better, everything feels better. My energy levels are way more consistent, and that's also another reason why I started cutting out meat with that first meal. I find if I cut meat out that first meal, my energy levels are actually way better.
Yeah.
My performance as far as workouts has not suffered at all. It's actually gotten better, and that's over a long period of time. So for me, that's an all around win. That tells me that's working for me. So those are probably the 3 or 4 major components that I noticed.
Yeah, that's cool. How does that go over at the station? Like, if you're at the house, do you tell do the guys or girls not eat meat for the first meal, or do they just make you your own little plate? They're like, Aaron's gonna eat that, and we'll eat this thing.
At this point, everyone understands that I'm kind of that guy. That woo
Yeah,
woo kind of like woo.
yeah,
Like, hey, what are you doing is new. What's the new fitness thing? What's the new
yeah.
craze? And
I
so
got you.
it's just again at the firehouse too. I'm again at my station where I work when I'm permanently assigned. It's easy because a lot of us they're pretty healthy. There's always vegetables. We do a pretty good job of navigating that. If I'm out of house, I'm not going to be disrespectful to the guys. I'm not going to be like, no, I'm not going to eat that because you cooked meat. No, I'll eat meat that day. It's not a
Sure.
big deal. And I think sometimes we forget that breaking bread with people in that communal sense, that's one of the most important things we can do for longevity, health, vitality, uh,
Yeah.
testosterone levels. We can go down a list, but that connection with people is more important. And the question is, why am I doing it? Am I doing it I'm feeling forced? I'm doing it because I want to join in in this meal time, right? And if I'm doing it because I
Yeah.
want to join and be a part of it, that's a positive place to come from, and that so for me that's okay.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like hearing that. I totally, and I think so I've been on the job for 12, looking at the date. I'm coming up on 12 years in like 2 weeks. Um so just since the time I started, the whole diet thing has changed so much, man. Before, if you wanted to eat something healthy, they're like, no, you're not eating with us then. Like, go sit in the bay, we'll eat dinner. It was just like a ton of pasta. There was always like huge, like everything was fried or like super unhealthy. And now, if you could have like a whole station of guys or girls that's just keto, and they're like, no, this is what we eat, and they'll be rigid for a diet. We ate like this was not my choice, all right, but I'm one of those. I'm always on like the busier truck, and I never cook, so my thing is like I'll eat whatever you put in front of me. I don't care, just make sure there's enough, right? I don't care what it is. So like 2 years ago, everybody in the station was keto except me, so we ate keto for a full year, and I enjoyed it, you know what I mean? It was all right, but like my cholesterol did go up a little bit, but the idea that the diet thing can absolutely happen, and having people, you could have 2 or 3 different diets at the table at the same time. And it's cool to hear that, you don't have to be extreme about it. But knowing that you do this stuff, you're rigid with it when you're rigid with yourself when you need to be, and you're not, so, I guess like tight with it, so dogmatic that, it kind of messes up the station life too. That's good, because I think a lot of people get like shied away from it. They're like, well, if I do this, I'm never going to be able to eat with everybody at the station or anything like that ever again. They're going to ostracize me or whatever. I don't think that's true. So it's pretty cool. And I wanted to go back to you mentioning the way you work out. So you'll do like a few rounds. You do normal stuff around the house. You go do a few more rounds, and you mentioned like throttle control. So obviously when you're training people, Oakland, you guys are busy, and you have a ton of fires compared to a lot of places. And what I'm hearing is when newer members get on the job and they need that sense of throttle control, they'll need that sense of throttle control. Because I know for me, when I first got on, and it's still like this on certain incidents that I don't have very often, but if you go to a working fire, you're like, your mind is 1,000 miles an hour, and you're only seeing like this close right in front of you. There is no throttle control. You're just full speed. Even if you're sitting on a knee, like putting your mask on, your mind is going like 1,000 miles an hour. It's terrible because you're not paying attention. You're not focusing on the other stuff. Is that kind of what you're you're using that for also? Like, I know the only way to get it other than training is to get the experience, and as a new member, I could totally see that being beneficial.
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, absolutely. There's so much to dive into here. One of the things I think we see in a lot of our training paradigms for uh, fire departments and tactical athletes, which is a word that, if you know, that I despise because I don't think we're athletes, but um, we train too often and too high of a heart range. And so
Interesting.
one of the things that I do in the recruits is I ask them, I say, we are going to train in this maximal heart range, 220 minus your age, blah, 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 you know, um, but it's going to be few and far between. And when we do it, it's going to be usually coupled with a rest, some kind of rest period, completely rest period, or a kind of lower intensity jumping rope, running, rowing, something to balance that out. But most of our workouts are going to be in this 150 to 140, 160 range because that is where we have the best auditory processing. It's when we have the best mental clarity. It's when we have the most amount of movement functions available to us. Um, heart rate and mindset are very closely related. As you as you alluded to, your heart's pounding, bop, 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 and your mind's racing. Your tunnel vision comes in, right? Your heart rate's too high, right?
Yeah.
And if we only ever train that, then as soon as we're met with anything physical, our body's going to default into that upper heart rate range because it's prepping us for that event. That's all we ever do, right? And getting people to understand that on the fire ground, you want your heart rate 140, 150, and that's where you want to keep it. You're going to have better oxygen consumption in your bottle. You're going to have better thought processes. You'll see more. You'll understand more. You'll hear more. Your decision making will be better. Everything's going to be better in the outcome of the fire. And so trying to train people in that heart range, train people, to understand what that feels like without a heart rate monitor, because we're not going to have a heart rate monitor. We're not going to look at it at a fire. So where's that connection? How do we understand what that feels like? And we try to train that and practice that. Also, the idea is it's idea of throttle control and flow of a fire. We can train that when we work out as well, right?
Yeah.
We can push and back off and push and back off and push and back off and while they're working out, we ask them questions. What about this? What about this? Where's this person? Where's that person? And their minds. They realize I need to keep thinking more than I need to be putting out like 1,000%, right?
Yeah.
And this is again, this is something that you learn that like you said, Oakland, we have an old department, a lot of tradition, a lot of old timers. When I came in, and some of the things you learn from them, like, hey man, slow down, kid. Like you're moving too fast, right? And you see it. People come in and move too fast, and they make mistakes, make things harder. And taking a little bit of time, pulling back a little bit, actually makes things go faster.
Yeah. Yeah. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast, right? So I think there are times, right? So if you pull up and you have to make a rescue immediately, there's pulling the ladder off the truck, throwing it to the second floor, breaking the window, getting in the building. That's like full throttle until the job is done. So I could see where you would need to train for that, but you're saying you should be able to function like that and not have your heart rate so through the roof that you can't focus.
Absolutely.
You're keeping it down.
And to your point, like, okay, it says a rescue, second floor rescue, right? What ladder are we going to pull off? Because not every building's the same size, right? It might be a 20, it might be a 16, it might be a 22. We don't know, right? It might be a commercial. So and then what's best access? Is it internal? Is it through a window, right? And these are all thought processes that we need to run through. And maybe it's not your job, right? Maybe you're on the truck, and maybe your job is top side ventilation, and that's going to be the best thing you can do. So operational discipline, right? And understanding just because you hear something doesn't mean you got to jump towards that thing, right?
Mm.
And so, again, we have some luxuries in Oakland. We have a pretty big department, and we have some pretty defined roles where you sit, and so it's pretty clear on who does what. If I hear a rescue, unless it's right in front of me, I'm generally, if I'm driving the truck or tillering, I'm not worried about that. That's the bird dog spot, right? And I have faith they're going to handle that. If they need more help, they're going to call. I need to get that hole cut because that's to make everything better, right? The hose line is in place, and so the hose team, they're not even worried about the rescue, right? And so we have some luxuries that other departments may not have as far as that goes. But to your point, making that decision and thought process, if you're jacked up coming off the rig, you might miss things. And so even in that situation, I think the clear decision making, And then once you make a decision, finding where you can move, right? Once we get, okay, this is the size ladder I need, now you can move fast to that ladder and get it thrown, right? Once you get in that building, you start doing the search, we got to calm down because we need to be able to hear, feel, and have our senses with us to be able to guide us to the building and find that person, right? If
Yeah.
moving too fast, you blow over them, right? And I don't know about people here, but when I was new, I blew over a couple people in buildings because I was so jacked and amped up. Like you just, oh, it's good, it's clear, and
Right,
it's
right,
not,
right.
and it's not clear. We learn like, hey, that it doesn't always work that way, right? Sometimes it's better to take it down
Yeah.
a notch.
Yeah, they teach you from day one. The textbook from out of the fire book, primary search is rapid and systematic. You're just like, you don't hear systematic, you hear rapid. And then it's the fire academy instructor yelling, go, 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 go. And then when we do PT, we're keeping your heart rate above, 180, 200, like to try to be as, they're like, this is how it's got to be. You got to be able to function under stress. So you are the first person I've heard say throttle control. I like the idea of thinking about it as if you were on scene with a senior man or senior woman, she would say, hey, slow down for a second. You're missing stuff. Um, so it's basically like that, right? It's like saying, hey, be able to function as much as you need to, but don't function full throttle all the time. Like go full throttle when you absolutely have to, and then be able to hone your senses and slow your heart rate down, focus on stuff. You'll miss everything. Yeah, I think for new people that's like crucial, absolutely crucial. Um, and like you have a whole curriculum around this, I'm sure. But is this something that you have like set up for other departments, or is it something you've only done with Oakland? Have people come to you for this stuff?
I'm working on setting up for other departments. It's a slow process.
Yeah.
I've only done it in Oakland. I've only trained Oakland recruits. So I'm in the process of trying to package it all together for other departments and put those philosophies and ideas into motion. I do believe that there's a lot we can do, and a lot we can teach other departments and kind of change this mentation and this philosophy that we have. I do think there's better ways to train.
Yeah, and there's so much value in that. That's, the whole point behind the brand that I started is like we kind of bash our heads against the wall for so long and we're starting to realize, hey, there's probably a better way to approach not just mental health, physical health as well. Common sense kind of gets a little bit shed to the side when it comes to our tradition and the way we think we're supposed to do things based on our culture, not based on science or based on what we've researched.
Speaking of your company, there's a study that they did in Wim Hof when they put him in the MRI and measured his body and hormones, and he was in the tube with the ice suit on, the ice water's going through his body, and he's using his mindset to control it. And they found he released a ton of endocannabinoids into his body through the ice bath. And so, one of the things I think is wonderful about the Wim Hof method, to piggyback on what we talked about at the very beginning of this interview, is it really gives us the tools and power to become our own heroes. To say, we can control our own health and we can control our own well-being, and a lot of the medicines that we need that are best for us are already inside of us.
Oh, absolutely.
And through this technique, through the breathing and through the cold, you can harness those those endogenous compounds that are really huge for health and well-being.
Yeah, that's I heard a good quote. They were like, the body doesn't produce what it does not need, right? So like, it's naturally producing what naturally occurring cannabinoids, and like the highest concentration that you'll find them in the human body is during pregnancy, like when a woman is giving birth. That's when they come out the most.
Specifically
DMT too.
one.
Yeah, I didn't know that one. Yeah, that one is probably needed a little bit. You know what I mean? But the pain and the stress on the body that female has to go through during labor, like you would think the body's like, okay, we're in, we're in deep right now. Like, let's release some painkillers. What are they going to release? Endocannabinoids, which is super interesting. But yeah, like the body's not going to produce what it doesn't need. And hearing that, I didn't know that study. That's pretty cool. I'm gonna have to look at that because I'm a research nut when it comes to this stuff. So I do
I'll
enjoy
try
it.
to dig it up for you.
Okay, cool.
It's buried in the text it was kind of mentioned in
Oh
the
yeah.
text as a side, but I'll try to figure it out for you.
Yeah. And cold in general, I mean, I know is as far as balancing your immune health, like your joints, making sure you're reducing inflammation and all that stuff. I mean, pro athletes have been doing this for a while now, after they have a really long practice, strenuous workout, ice bath, it's pretty cool. On that note, like what is your cold tub consist of? What do you just throw a bunch of ice in there and then sit in water?
Is
Is
it?
it
Yeah, so it's just a horse trough. It's a 200-gallon horse trough, 6 feet long, about maybe 2.5, 3 feet high, and I don't know, maybe 18 inches wide. And in the winter here in Oakland, it gets cold enough where the water is down around the high to mid 40s, which is pretty solid for every day. Even right now, the water is probably about the high 40s.
oh man. Yeah.
So that's pretty good for every day. And then in the summer, um, I'll buy ice and ice it down. Sometimes in the winter, I'll ice it down, and that's the easiest way to get your ice bath going.
How long do you sit in there?
It depends. Again, I'm not. Again, I think the one of the things that is so important about the Wim Hof method is it's not about the length of time you sit in, right? The science really wants to come up with a number for this. And people are like, hey, sit for this long, that's gonna be perfect, right? And the idea is that you get in and you want to get to the point where your body can release into that cold, and then it's not a struggle anymore.
Hmm.
You're in here and your body's set. And there are times when the day or whatever in my life or timing wise, I just go until I get that point, and then I get out. And sometimes I got more
Gotcha.
time and things feel good, and I'll sit there for 10 minutes and just be like, man, this really feels great right now. This is awesome. Like I don't want to get out.
Yeah.
But also I want people hearing this to understand that anyone can sit in an ice bath for 10 minutes. You can grit through that. But the goal is not to grit through it. The goal is not to, and then when you get out, you don't want to be shivering like crazy when you get out and then be cold for the rest of the day. The goal is the rest of the night or whenever you do it. The goal is to be able to be in a calm mind state, to not have to grit through it. And then when you get out, that your body it has trained and strong enough that it can heat and warm itself and you're not cold and shivering the entire time. Right? It takes time. It takes time for the body. It takes time for the cells. It takes time for the mitochondrial density to increase. It takes time for all the little muscles and the vascular system to heal and to grow and to strengthen. But you want to be able to get in, get out, do some horse stance, and then your body is warming itself, and you're not in this shivery state. And so, understanding that connection, understanding kind of uh, where that line is what I like to dance and play with.
Interesting. Yeah, if you guys want Google horse dance, Wim Hof horse dance or whatever, he's like has that little like shuffle that you do when you get out or whatever. But even in general, like the guy is super interesting. The stuff he's accomplished and some of the research done around him. That's what kind of brought me over here. I think what you're doing is awesome. Like I said, I follow your page, like the Movement Mondays thing. I'm watching those and I enjoy those. I would try to incorporate those in. But I think like bringing that stuff around the station is important. So if you guys haven't seen Aaron's morning routine video, it's like a few back. Check it out because that kind of gives you context of what we were talking about today. I caught a few things and I was like, I love all of this stuff. But one thing that he was talking about was like, hey, I'm not going to go into depth on all this. I'm just going to tell you what I do. So I'm glad you were able to, kind of share exactly what that was and why it was. Because I think that stuff's important. And also me personally, I want to, I like a morning routine. I used to never have one. It was just, I let the day control me. And I was like, I would wake up and it was just pulled in 100 different directions. I got 3 dogs. So like when I get up in the morning, it's like wrangling them and it's chaos, and I got to get them walked, and like I'm like secretly preparing myself for kids. I think I don't know, but it's like a good first start. So getting them fed and getting all that stuff, getting to work, and I didn't like that. I just kind of wake up and I'm just like kind of stumbling out of a stupor and trying to get to work. I like the idea of having time in the morning, like where I'm not rushing. I'm finding stillness, and I feel like I have much more clarity throughout the day. I feel like, my stress level never goes up high, so I like hearing what other people do. But incorporating the physical portion of it and keeping, yourself hydrated, keeping the workout logical and keeping it functional to what we do, I think is really important. So it was awesome, man. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. On a side note, if do you drive the tiller?
So in Oakland, we rotate, and so it's kind of how do I explain it quickly? You spend 1 month driving the truck because it's not promoted. So we don't have promoted positions for truck drivers and tillers. It's just
Oh, okay.
firefighters.
Nice. That's
Our
cool.
engineers are promoted, and again, I've this is a whole another podcast topic if you guys are curious about this. But we like I said, our department has a rich tradition, and it's like a spider web trying to explain it to outsiders.
I like it.
A little easier trying to explain it to firefighters. So I'm the senior guy on my crew. It's for all intents and purposes, I basically control the entire day. It's almost like an officer. It's a little more complex to explain, but we spend 1 month driving the truck, 1 month tilling the truck, 1 month in the fourth seat, which we call the bird dog seat, which is kind of a catch-all to fire as a super complicated position. You have forcible entry, you have rescue, you have horizontal ventilation, you have utilities. It's kind of a catch-all spot, and you got to kind of figure out what's most important. Then 1 month on the engine, and then back to the rotation. And some of our houses have 5 truck people, so then you spend a month in the dummy seat, which is the fifth person, which is like the driver's bird dog, so to speak. And so the driver and tiller go to the roof. It's a 2-person operation in the east end of Oakland, and the driver has the radio and will communicate directly with the IC. There is no officer on the roof. That's a firefighter's job for the most part, and then the officer and the bird dog go in and do search and look for victims and forcible entry. That's generally how it works. And so because I'm the senior firefighter, I don't spend a lot of time in the bird dog and engine seat anymore. Usually driving or tillering, mostly because we have new guys that don't necessarily have the experience to be on the roof by themselves.
Yeah.
And making those calls. So at this point, most of my fires, unless it's really ripping, I'll hand them the saw and kind of tell them what to do and kind of guide them through that and let them make their mistakes and learn. And talk to the chief. The chief needs to talk to. I try not to talk on the radio much. I don't like talking on the radio, so I don't talk spoken to. Not and so then just that's kind of how it works.
That's cool.
That goes. Yeah,
I like hearing the other stuff. We don't have tillers. I love them. I think they're badass. But South Florida, there's a couple of departments around here. I work for Boca Raton, so a little bit south of us. Hollywood has tillers. I can't think of another one. But anyway, the idea of how you get into that spot I thought was interesting, because I know most of our guys, if we got a tiller, every captain would basically take a demotion tomorrow. You know what I mean? They'd want to drive that truck immediately. Is that kind of a coveted spot for people to get that?
it is and isn't.
Just because you rotate through.
Yeah, you rotate through. It's a great spot. It's awesome. It's super fun. I personally like driving better. But yeah, I mean, it's hard. I wouldn't say it's necessarily coveted per se. The officers don't ever get to drive. That's not the officer's job,
Yeah.
But in my department, so
It's fun driving.
it's different. It is. I enjoy it. I
Yeah.
think I still think it's. I feel like a little kid that's getting away with something that it's one of those perks
Right.
of the job. Going code 3. I mean, how it is how you are, but our streets are tight. People drive like crazy out here in Oakland sometimes, and you're driving code 3 and weaving in and out of traffic, going against traffic, going suicide, coming back in, coming back out, making your reads. And again, the officer in Oakland, the driver is expected to know where they're going, to memorize the maps. The officer is not the expectation of the officer should not have to tell you where to go. They're not telling you what to do. They're not telling you where to spot the rig. That's all my responsibility.
Yeah.
So they can be clear to do their own thing. They got their own officer shit to do, right? And so all responsibility is on your plate, and I enjoy that. I enjoy getting up there and getting my spot and figuring out what ladder to get, and all that stuff is super fun. And
yeah, it gives you some autonomy, and it feels like you get to practice a lot of this stuff that you're doing as far as the mindset, preparation, the physical preparation. It's like, all right, I've been on my off days, like I'm ready right now. You get to see like how it all comes together, which I think is pretty cool too. It's like you're training not just for fire stuff, but like peak performance. Like how are you going to function at your peak?
So I have a theory about this. It's funny you brought that up. I think with it, too often we use the word train for peak performance when it comes to firefighters and warrior classes in general.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at a lot of like old Greek texts, they made a clear distinction between their warriors and their athletes. They understood athletes needed proper food, proper rest, and they needed to be at a peak performance. And athletes train to hit this peak, right? And it could take their periodization might take years. It might be a year long. It might be a 4-year process for Olympics, right? Where you have these but you're training to get this razor sharp peak with a
Yeah.
singular performance, right? And for an athlete, anything can throw them off that razor's edge,
Yeah.
and it's so sharp that anything can nick it, and that's not what we can't do that in the fire service. We don't ever perform at peak, so why should we train for peak?
Yeah.
We always train from a depleted state, and so my thing is we need to train valleys. We need to train our low points and to get our low points up, because Lord knows that you're going to be tired. You're going to be unrested. You might not be hydrated. You might not be fed, but we're still expected to perform at a very high level. And so I think the philosophy of peak performance when it comes to firefighters is adapted from the athletic world, which is fine, but it's not what we do, and it's not who we are. And no one talks about this thing. Look, we need to train in a depleted state when you're tired, when you're exhausted, when you have nothing left. That's when you need to train.
Damn,
That's
so
when you need to
true.
work out.
Yeah.
That's when you need to perform.
Right.
And it's in those valleys that our job is won and lost, not at the peaks.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the idea of the word peak performance makes total sense for an athlete. Like you said, you could do all this stuff just to run the race, the 100 meter or whatever at the Olympics 4 years from now. So or like a power lifter.
Yeah.
They're one lift. It's a culmination of 4 years of perfect nutrition and perfect sleep in a balance for 4 years to do that one lift. And we're 5 o'clock in the morning, you're on your fifth call after midnight. You haven't ate or slept in hours, and you're like, oh man, I'm just trying to hold it together right now. And then it's like, bang, you can get a commercial structure fire right at that moment, and you're working for another 3, 4, 5 hours right there.
Or the flip side,
So
what
yeah.
you said, you're up all night, and you were running BS calls, nothing exciting. You're up all night.
Yeah,
Man,
that's more realistic.
yeah. But then you get off and you go home and you have kids, and your family wants
Yeah.
to go do something, and they
Yeah.
need you to be present and not zoned out and
Yeah.
ready to go. And so if you don't understand and train that, then you're going to fail on duty and also off duty. And I see this all the time. And it's one of those things where I think just a simple shift in language use and ideas up here can help us be much better on duty and off duty.
That's a great way to put it too. I never would have thought about it like that, where this is affecting, it's affecting you off duty with your family too. Um, eh, you know, I think there's a ton of stuff in here that we could probably even break off and do more. I'd love to have you on here again.
You let me know when. I'm
Yeah,
always honored to
for
chat with you.
sure. Yeah, so it would be cool. We could do I would like to get into even other stuff like what you go over for injury prevention, what you do for like staying, warm ups or anything. I'm really interested in injury prevention too. I see a lot of our people go out with shoulders, with backs, ACL is a big one. And like your movement Mondays and a lot of the physical stuff you do, I'm like, this is very practical stuff. You can do it in the station, you can do it in your garage, and it's gonna increase our longevity. This could save somebody's pension. This could save somebody's, from going out with disability. It could be a big deal.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Yeah, one of the issues I have is that you see a lot of these online injury prevention things or programs. Kelly Starrett's a great example. They're too complex. For the average firefighter, for the average person out there, it's too complex, and it takes too much time to be like, okay, I'm gonna use this for this and this for this. And there are people like you and like me who are like nerds. I love that shit. I'll read it and I'll figure it out and I'll play with it, but that's not everybody.
Yeah.
And so probably it's the first time I'll say this on live air, but I'm actually working on a prehab program, a six week program.
Nice.
And it should be available hopefully in 2 months or so. And I'll shoot you a copy and you can check it out. It's going to have a lot of stuff that I've gone over my Instagram. I'm putting it together. And it has some other stuff that I don't always show. But the idea is these are simple, full body things that every firefighter should be doing, so they don't have the knees and the backs and the shoulders and the Achilles. I don't know about your department, but Achilles are a big deal in our department. I don't know what's going on, but we blow out Achilles like left and right.
We just had a guy come back. He blew it out last year. The incline in Manitou Springs, like in Colorado, the incline that everybody always wants to run. It's like one staircase. Yeah. He blew it out on that. Oh. They were out there like on a fire department trip. It was the National Fallen Firefighters Memorial. They do it, September or whatever, and he blew it out. He just came back. It took like 6 months. I know it's terrible. So if people want to find you, where's the best place they find you? I know your Instagram here, Live, Serve, Thrive, but
yeah, the best place to find me is on my Instagram at Live, Serve, Thrive. That's the best place to find me. Okay. I do have a website. It's up. There's not a lot on there yet. It's getting more robust as we speak. And so that's a place to find me as well. Same Live, Serve, Thrive. And the Instagram is live.serve.thrive. Facebook too. I'm not really on Facebook, but same thing, Live, Serve, Thrive on Facebook.
Okay, cool. So Instagram's the best place. Guys, give Aaron a follow. And if you enjoyed this, please, share it around the station. We went over a lot of good stuff today. Aaron, take care, brother. Great meeting you.
Thank you very much.
Talking to you. We'll have you back.
Yep.
Yeah, man.
Have a good one.